There was a time in baseball history when routines looked a little different. Long before sports science and strict diets took over, one man stood out, not just for his legendary stats, but for the chaos he carried with him off the field. Babe Ruth lived like the rules didn't apply to him. Ruth's days were filled with things few would call athletic. He started his mornings with heavy, indulgent meals, lit cigars like they were casual accessories, and didn't think twice about knocking back drinking beer, no matter the hour. It blows my mind how he managed to function, let alone dominate. He played in an era where structure was loose, routines were all over the place, and honestly, some of his choices made bigger headlines than his home runs. And weirdly, that's what makes his story so addictive to look back on. There was something about the way he lived, loud, excessive, and completely unapologetic, that made him as unforgettable off the field as he was on it. Looking back now, his lifestyle seems almost impossible, and yet somehow it worked, at least for a while. If you followed Babe Ruth around for just one day, you'd probably wonder how he was still standing, let alone hitting baseballs into the stands. Nothing about his routine resembled that of a professional athlete, not by modern standards, and honestly, not even by the standards of his own time. His mornings began with what could only be described as indulgence. Breakfast was never light, he preferred it grand. On certain days, that meant a thick steak paired with an 18-egg omelet, a mountain of fried potatoes, toast, hotcakes, candy bars, and coffee. Sometimes that entire spread was washed down with a full quart of bourbon and ginger ale. That wasn't a weekend cheat day, it was just how Ruth started things off. But that was only the beginning. Mid-morning? A snack, if you could call it that, consisting of 2 hot dogs and 2 bottles of Coca-Cola. Then came lunch. Still hungry by midday, he'd often double back for another round. Again, hot dogs and soda like clockwork. When it came time to play, Ruth wasn't arriving on an empty stomach, and yet, despite this chaotic buildup of calories and questionable choices, he walked onto the field ready to dominate. During games, he'd often sip beer in the dugout and, on occasion, light up a cigar between innings, calmly like it was the most natural thing in the world. Dinner didn't tone things down either. 2 porterhouse steaks, raw, cottage fried potatoes, more lettuce drowned in dressing, 2 helpings of apple pie. And for dessert, not just ice cream, chocolate ice cream served alongside pickled eels. By the end of the day, Ruth had consumed enough food to fuel a small team. But somehow, this bizarre daily routine didn't slow him down. If anything, it only added to the myth. Because for all the greasy food, alcohol, and nicotine, he still played like no one else. Of course, this isn't to say his success was thanks to the pickled eels. Ruth's dominance on the field had far more to do with his natural athleticism, sharp instincts, and a swing that helped redefine the sport. His record-setting home runs and larger-than-life presence transformed baseball into a spectacle, one built on power and personality. But there came a point where even his body had to say enough. By the end of 1924, Ruth had been living exactly as he pleased, overeating, drinking, and partying his way through the off-season. His marriage was struggling, his weight was up, and his health was quietly spiraling. He showed up to training camp in 1925, carrying nearly 40 extra pounds, looking sluggish and unwell. His manager told him as much. Ruth just shrugged and joked, "I've got a temperature of 105 8/5. It might have been funny if it weren't so real. The flu hit him hard that spring. He was weak, feverish, and far from game ready. Doctors warned him to sit out and recover, but Ruth, in true fashion, ignored it. He kept playing. In one exhibition game, sick, tired, and barely holding together, he still hit 2 home runs. He was batting .449 despite having lost 21 pounds to illness. But his body was breaking. The team boarded a train to Asheville, North Carolina. It was a rough ride through the Smoky Mountains, and even the healthiest players were nauseated by the swaying cars. When Ruth stepped off the train, he collapsed. A teammate caught him just before he hit the marble platform. News of his condition spread like wildfire. American papers said it was the flu. A British paper jumped the gun and published an obituary. Canadian outlets reported his death, too. The public didn't know what to believe, but the headlines had already coined the moment. The bellyache heard round the world. Ruth was rushed to New York by train. At one point, too sick to eat for days, he managed to force down a big breakfast, then collapsed again in the train bathroom, smashing his head against the sink. When the train arrived at Penn Station, over 25,000 people were waiting. He was so large and so unwell, the crew had to literally cut open the side of the train to remove him. While on the stretcher, he went into 3 more violent convulsions. It took 6 men to hold him down. He managed to whisper to his wife, "Helen, I feel rotten," before being rushed to the hospital. Doctors tried to stay calm, calling it just a bad flu. But the next day, they performed surgery for an intestinal abscess, deep, painful, and serious enough to keep him off the field for 7 weeks. For once, Ruth's body had finally said no more. Looking at the way Babe Ruth lived and how his body nearly gave out, it's hard not to wonder, how on earth did he still manage to play at such a high level? After weeks of recovery, surgery, and being close to death's door, most athletes would have needed months of rehab just to walk back onto the field. But Ruth returned in just under 2 months and picked up his bat like nothing had happened. It was as if his body somehow still remembered how to be great. And this wasn't a one-time comeback story. Time and time again, Ruth's lifestyle clashed violently with his career. And yet, he delivered. He led leagues in home runs, broke records, and became one of the most feared hitters of his time. Whether hungover, feverish, or fresh off a night of indulgence, Ruth still managed to connect with the ball in a way few ever have. Some called it pure luck. Others believed he was built differently. Maybe it was genetic, natural hand-eye coordination, a perfect swing, and sheer power. Maybe his instincts on the field were so sharp that even when his body lagged, his mind took over. Or maybe, and this is what makes him so fascinating, he was just an unrepeatable product of his time. A man whose chaos somehow coexisted with greatness. Whatever it was, Ruth didn't just survive his choices, he thrived in spite of them. Nutrition science would sound alarms at every corner of his diet. And yet, Ruth's story reminds us that performance isn't always so easily explained. Still, if you're wondering whether this kind of diet could, or even should, be replicated today, I'll be honest with you, probably not. For most of us, trying to live like Babe Ruth would land us in the ER faster than it would get us to first base. That much is clear. I can't help but wonder what someone like Ruth would look like in a modern MLB dugout. Surrounded by protein shakes, wearable tech, dietitians hovering nearby, and every move tracked by analysts, he'd stand out, and not in a good way. The game today is built on precision. Recovery routines are strict, diets are clean, and athletes are sculpted into machines. There's no room for beer between innings or scarfing down hot dogs before a game starts. Physically, let's face it, he wouldn't pass the eye test. By today's standards, Ruth would be considered out of shape, constantly fatigued, and probably flagged by medical staff before he even touched the field. A routine like his wouldn't just be unusual, it might get him benched altogether. But then again, Ruth wasn't just anyone. He had that raw, untouchable talent. A swing that looked effortless, a presence that packed stadiums, the kind of hand-eye coordination and natural strength that you just can't teach. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that blend sports, history, and a little bit of chaos. Do you think Babe Ruth would survive in today's MLB? Comment below. We'll be reading all of them.